Rooted in our tradition, some of us felt that to be abandoned by humanity then was not the ultimate. We felt that to be abandoned by God was worse than to be punished by Him. Better an unjust God than an indifferent one. For us to be ignored by God was a harsher punishment than to be a victim of His anger. Man can live far from God, not outside God. God is wherever we are. Even in suffering? Even in suffering. In a way, to be indifferent to that suffering is what makes the human being inhuman. Indifference, after all, is more dangerous than anger and hatred. Anger can at times be creative. One writes a great poem, a great symphony. One does something special for the sake of humanity because one is angry at the injustice that one witnesses. But indifference is never creative. Even hatred. At times may elicit a response. You fight it. You denounce it. You disarm it. Indifference elicits no response. Indifference is not a response. Indifference is not a beginning. It is an end. And, therefore, indifference is always the friend of the enemy. For it benefits the aggressor, never his victim, whose pain is magnified when he or she feels forgotten. The political prisoner in his cell, the hungry children, the homeless refugees, not to respond to their plight. Not to relieve their solitude by offering them a spark of hope is to exile them from human memory. And in denying their humanity, we betray our own. Indifference, then, is not only a sin, it is a punishment. And this is one of the most important lessons of this. Outgoing centuries wide-ranging experiments in good and evil. In the place that I come from, society was composed of three simple categories. The killers, the victims, and the bystanders. During the darkest of times, inside the ghettos and death camps, and I'm glad that Mrs. Clinton mentioned that we are now commemorating that event, that period. That we are now in the days of remembrance, but then, we felt abandoned, forgotten. All of us did. And our only miserable consolation was that we believed that Auschwitz and Treblinka were. Closely guarded secrets. That the leaders of the free world did not know what was going on. Behind those black gates and barbed wire. That they had no knowledge of the war against the Jews. That Hitler's armies and their accomplices waged as part of the war against the Allies. If they knew, we thought, surely those leaders would have moved heaven and earth to intervene. They would have spoken out with great outrage and conviction. They would have bombed the railways leading to Birkenau, just the railways, just once. And now we knew, we learned, we discovered that the Pentagon knew, the State Department knew. And the illustrious occupant of the White House then, who was a great leader, and I say it with some anguish and pain. Because, today is exactly 54 years marking his death. Franklin Delano Roosevelt died on April the 12th. (1945). So he is very much present to me and to us. No doubt. He was a great leader. He mobilized the American people and the world, going into battle. Bringing hundreds and thousands of valiant and brave soldiers in America to fight fascism, to fight dictatorship, to fight Hitler. And so many of the young people fell in battle. And, nevertheless, his image in Jewish history, I must say it, his image in Jewish history is flawed. The depressing tale of the St. Louis is a case in point. 60 years ago, its human cargo nearly won. Jews was turned back to Nazi Germany. And that happened after the Kristallnacht, after the first state-sponsored pogrom. With hundreds of Jewish shops destroyed, synagogues burned, thousands of people put in concentration camps. And that ship, which was already in the shores of the United States, was sent back. I don't understand. Roosevelt was a good man. With a heart. He understood those who needed help. Why didn't he allow these refugees to disembark? A thousand people in America, the great country, the greatest democracy. The most generous of all new nations in modern history. What happened? I don't understand. Why the indifference? On the highest level, to the suffering of the victims. But then, there were human beings who were sensitive to our tragedy. Those non-Jews, those Christians, that we call the righteous Gentiles. Whose selfless acts of heroism saved the honor of their faith. Why were they so few? Why was there a Greater effort to save SS murderers after the war than to save their victims during the war? Why did some of America's largest corporations continue to do business with Hitler's Germany until 1942? It has been suggested. And it was documented, that the Wehrmacht could not have conducted its invasion of France without oil obtained from American sources. How is one to explain their indifference? And yet, my friends, good things have also happened in this dramatic century, the defeat of Nazism. The collapse of communism, the rebirth of Israel on its ancestral soil. The demise of apartheid, Israel's peace treaty with Egypt, the peace accord in Ireland. And let us remember the meeting, filled with drama and emotion, between Rabin and Arafat that Mr. President, convened in this very place. I was here and I will never forget it. And then, of course, the joint decision of the United States and NATO to intervene in Kosovo and save those victims. Those refugees, those who were uprooted by a man. Whom I believe that because of his crimes, should be charged with crimes against humanity. But this time, the world was not silent. This time, we do respond. This time, we intervene. Does it mean that we have learned from the past? Does it mean that society has changed? Has the human being become less indifferent and more human? Have we really learned from our experiences? Are we less insensitive to the plight of victims of ethnic cleansing and other forms of injustices in places near and far? Is today's justified intervention in Kosovo, led by you, Mr. President, a lasting warning that never again will the deportation the terrorization of children and their parents, be allowed anywhere in the world? Will it discourage other dictators in other lands to do the same? What about the children? Oh, we see them on television, we read about them in the papers, and we do so with a broken heart. Their fate is always the most tragic, inevitably. When adults wage war, children perish. We see their faces, their eyes. Do we hear their pleas? Do we feel their pain? Their agony? Every minute one of them dies of disease, violence, famine. Some of them, so many of them could be saved. And so, once again, I think of the young Jewish boy from the Carpathian Mountains. He has accompanied the old man I have become throughout these years of quest and struggle. And together we walk towards the new millennium, carried by profound fear and extraordinary hope. Elizabeth Glaser. 1992 Democratic National Convention Address. Delivered July 14, 1992, New York, New York. I'm Elizabeth Glaser. "11 years ago, while giving birth to my first child. I hemorrhaged and was transfused with 7 pints of blood. 4 years later, I found out that I had been infected with the AIDS virus and had unknowingly passed it to my daughter. Ariel, through my breast milk, and my son, Jake, in utero. "20 years ago I wanted to be at the Democratic Convention because it was a way to participate in my country. Today, I am here because it's a matter of life and death. Exactly 4 years ago my daughter died of AIDS. She did not survive the Reagan administration. I am here because my son and I may not survive 4 more years of leaders who say they care. But do nothing. I am in a race with the clock. This is not about being a Republican or an independent or a Democrat. It's about the future for each and every one of us. I started out just a mom fighting for the life of her child. But along the way I learned how unfair America can be today, not just for people who have HIV. But for many, many people, poor people, gay people, people of color, children. A strange spokesperson for such a group, a well-to-do white woman. But I have learned my lesson the hard way. And I know that America has lost her path and is at risk of losing her soul. America, wake up, we are all in a struggle between life and death. I understand the sense of frustration and despair in our country. Because I know firsthand about shouting for help and getting no answer. I went to Washington to tell Presidents Reagan and Bush that much. Much more had to be done for AIDS research and care, and that children couldn't be forgotten. The first time, when nothing happened, I thought, they just didn't hear me. The second time, when nothing happened, I thought, maybe I didn't shout loud enough. But now I realize they don't hear because they don't want to listen.